Welcome to Product Marketing Alliance. We're home to everything a product marketer needs to learn, share, and succeed in their role. The definitive product marketing course, Product Marketing Core, is the perfect platform for experienced product marketers to broaden their existing knowledge, as well as educate newcomers beginning with their product marketing journey. Our community. We're home to more than 10,000 product marketers across the world, and every single day, tons of product marketing specific conversations go down. The community hasn't just been an absolute wealth of knowledge and answers, it's the place for constant inspiration. With a PMA membership plan, everything a product marketeer could possibly need is all in there, all in one place. Whether you want to grab a template, learn about how to become more strategic from product marketeers who've mastered it, sit back and watch hundreds of hours of presentations from some of the world's most trusted brands, our packages have got it all and more. We really are, dare we say it, the one-stop shop.
My name is Nisha, and I'm here to talk to you about how to create a killer value proposition for your customer today. A little bit about me before we get started. So as I said, my name is Nisha Goklaney. I have been in product marketing as well as marketing for the past 15 years. I started my career off in New York, working with iterate Financial and American Express. And I had the good fortune of starting out in product management and then moving on to marketing strategy and then finally into product marketing. And I've spent the last 5 years in Asia, covering the Asia Pacific region across iterate as well as Sage. So today I'd like to cover 5 main areas. I would like to start with sharing why value propositions are important. I think we all know this, but it's equally important to ground ourselves in the same truth. We'll talk about what value propositions are about. I'll then share with you one of my favorite frameworks for putting together a value proposition and some examples of value propositions against that framework. And then finally, we'll walk through 6 steps to create your own. So let's go ahead and get started. So value propositions are more important now than ever. And I say this because if I look at the left-hand side chart, and this chart comes to us from Trust Radius's 2020 report, about half of the buyers that do buy software or hardware today make their purchase decision without ever speaking to a sales rep. Now, why that's important is because it makes the life of a product marketing manager even more so important, because really what that product buyer is doing, or the service buyer is doing, is researching the product online and then making the purchase. On the right-hand side, I have another important stat, which is 59% of professionals who do buy software today are millennials. Once again, pointing to the fact that millennials are very comfortable purchasing software online, and they get to know about your product online. And so all the more so important for you to just nail that value proposition. All right, so value propositions. I really like this meme over here. It's not what you do, but it's about what you can do for me. And in this case, me is your customer. So once again, really important. A value proposition, it's not what you do, but what you can do for your customer. So a value proposition, very, very simply put, is a statement of how your product or service will benefit your customer. Something that you can talk about in 30 seconds or less. And it's all about the prospect and how they will benefit. All right, so now that we have this grounding in what a value proposition is, how important it is, let me introduce you to one of my favorite frameworks that I've used across the years to frame value propositions. And that is actually the strategizer framework. It's very simple, and I'll walk you through it. So the framework really is, and if we describe it, is about R, and then the product or service. So in this case, a taxi smartphone app. Helps, and you describe the customer segment. So in this case, it helps a taxi passenger who wants to, and you describe the job to be done by your product or service. So in this case, it is book a taxi by, and then you describe the pain point of the customer by minimizing or avoiding or eliminating the waiting time for a taxi. And that's when you introduce the benefit by enjoying affordable prices. And finally, unlike, and then you talk about how you're different versus the competition. So in this case, a typical taxi service provider. So once again, if we read it out loud, it says, our taxi smartphone app helps taxi passengers who want to book taxi by minimizing the wait time for a taxi and enjoying affordable prices, unlike typical taxi services by third. All right, so now once we have this strategizer framework, let's actually take a few examples and walk through the framework that will give you a better understanding of it. So example number one, and this is a site called Unbounce. As a marketer, this was one of the tools I used to use at some point back in the day. Unbounce's value proposition, if we read it out loud, is to build, publish, and A/B test landing pages without IT. The mobile responsive landing page builder for marketers. Pretty simple, huh? So now if we put it through the strategizer framework, and I have it on the bottom left over here, and I called out how the strategizer framework works in this example, I'll read it out loud. So our tool, so this product or service is a tool, helps, and the specific target segment is marketers who want to build mobile responsive landing pages by doing it themselves without IT, easily in just 3 steps, unlike the time, steps, and effort it would usually take if you were going through a third-party agency or using a developer. All right, I hope this is starting to make a little bit of sense. Now let's go into example number 2. This is probably a more well-known example, and that of Trello. So let's read the value proposition out loud. Trello lets you work more collaboratively and get more done. Trello's boards, lists, and cards enable you to organize and prioritize your projects in a fun, flexible, and rewarding way. So once again, taking it through the strategizer framework, just to bring this to life. Again, Trello is our tool. So the product or service is a tool that helps working professionals who want to be more organized by giving them tools that condense all the information and help visually organize and prioritize their projects. Unlike typical random ways, they might keep track of information that is often disconnected, disparate, or disorganized. Now, what you'll notice is that the unlike how we are versus competitors is subtle. It doesn't need to be called out, but the value proposition does so in a nice and discreet way without even saying it. The third example is that of WordPress. So I'm sure a lot of people know WordPress as product marketers. Their value proposition is create your new website for free. WordPress.com is the best place for your business blog or business site. So once again, taking it through our strategizer framework, our website helps non-technical people who want a personal blog or business website by giving them tools to do it themselves, easily, with free, ready, and purpose-built formats for personal blogs or business sites. Unlike the time, money, and effort it would take to build out a website otherwise via agencies, developers, etc. All right. So now that we have gone through a few examples of the strategizer framework. Let's get into 6 steps of how you can create your own value proposition and go through the process. So the 6 steps are pretty straightforward, and we'll go into each one of them. It begins with probably the most important step, and that is researching your audience, knowing who your target customer is, and then once you research them, creating an ideal buyer persona. Once you do that, the step 3 becomes researching your competitors and then putting together your primary benefit of your product, your service, or your tool. Step number 5 is offering social proof or tangible value, and we'll talk about what that means. And finally, it's all about testing and iterating. And I'll show you examples of how companies test and iterate all the time. All right, so step 1. Step 1 is all about researching your audience. And what you're trying to do over here is you're understanding their needs, what motivates them, what jobs they are trying to get done. At Intuit, we used to call it follow me homes, where we had a big culture of actually going to the customer side, understanding how they used our software, talking to them about why they started their business, what inspires them, what their passions are, and actually paying really close attention to how they describe the jobs to be done, about how they describe their pain points and where they like to spend their time and where they don't like to spend their time. A pro tip here would be, if you can record these sessions, it's really, really nice, because what that will let you do is go back and play back these sessions so you can actually start to use some of the customers' verbiage and language in your actual value propositions. On the right here, I have a discussion guide, like I said, of a whole host of questions to ask your customer to really understand how they interact with your software and the type of languages they use and the problem your software solves for them. Once you have a good handle on your target customer, step 2 goes into creating your ideal buyer persona. So this is just a template that we have here on how to create that ideal buyer persona. To the left, and I've put in a picture here to help you visualize who this person is, what role they play within the organization, whether they are a buyer, an influencer, or a ratifier. And then also to start listing down their key accountabilities, their pain points as they described it, their concerns, and how you believe your product can help. Finally, to the right, you also want to talk about and give your opinion about decision makers. So one thing I forgot to talk about is, once you've done a lot of these qualitative interviews, what you'll start to see, hopefully, are patterns. You'll start to see themes. These are the themes you want to use in order to write down your ideal buyer personas. Another pro tip over here is each persona's role is important, because what we know from Trust Radius is that 60% of purchases and software purchases in B2B life cycle are done by more than one person. So usually there's 2 to 3 people, sometimes there's 4 to 5 people. And so what's really important is that you not only have the buyer persona of the buyer, but also that of the other parties involved. So here's an example. So when we usually do buyer personas, the one thing that I do with my team is that we write down, who the influencer is, who is the champion, who's the buyer, and who the ratifier is. So we're really documenting each person's jobs to be done, each person's goals, and how we can help each person convince them through their journey. Step 3. So step 1 is you've got to know your audience. You've hopefully done a few rounds of qualitative interviews. You've gathered themes. Step 2 is you've written this down and you've framed your personas. You're now ready for step number 3. In step number 3, what you're doing is a deep dive analysis on your competition. You're going to each of their websites and you're understanding what their value propositions are. You're going and looking at their user reviews. What are other people saying about them? Not just what they say on their website, but what are the third-party vendors, affiliate sites saying about them. You're documenting each of their features and functionality versus your own. And finally, a pro tip here is if you do come across customers that you have interviewed that previously used a software of a competitor, that's a really great uncovering. If they're ready to talk about it, what you will notice and what I have noticed is you get a wealth of information from these customers. On the right-hand side are a couple of sites I like to use for competitive research as well. Moat is a site where you can just simply type your competitor's name and you can get a sense of how many display ad banners. You can get a sense of what they're marketing and what their key value proposition is right up front. So it's really interesting to see that. Once you have done this research on your competitors, I like to document it in this format. So obviously I take the key competitors that we have, put their logos on for each competitor, write down their value proposition, you're really just transcribing it. And then you're also, based on your understanding, writing down their market focus, what size of the market are they going after, what segment of the market they're going after, if they have any specific industry verticals they're calling out, and your assessment of their strengths, their weaknesses, and how you feel your product is better. What this does is that it becomes part of the research process and it becomes part of something that you can always reference when you go back. Step 4. So you've researched your customer, you've put down their persona, you've researched your competitor. Now you're ready to determine what the primary benefit of your product or service is. By now, you should be able to nail that primary benefit that your product or service is offering. A pro tip here would be to add more credibility, go that extra mile, and provide specific numbers. What do I mean by specific numbers? It's how exactly are you going to help your customer? Are you helping them out by increasing their sales, let's say 150%? Are you helping them out by helping them save hours in a week? Are you helping them out by increasing their productivity? Get very specific if you can on how exactly you're helping them out. In this example with Sage, Sage Intacct is a product of Sage. We say cut your close time as much as 70% and get your life back. For an accountant, and those that have friends as accountants, you'll know that they spend a long amount of time towards the month end and towards the end of the month. And so if we are able to cut their close time where they are not spending those nights and weekends during the 30th and the 31st of the month and getting their life back, that's tangible value we are adding to our key buyers and key influencers. Step 5. Offering social proof. Now, this is becoming increasingly important, and if you actually go from site to site, you will notice that pretty much all the leading sites like HubSpot, Hootsuite, Salesforce, they all have some type of social proof that they offer within their website. And that social proof comes from customer testimonials, from logos, and it's actually what customers are saying about your product. So good examples of social proof is when a customer is saying they've had an increase in productivity, or when they've saved time, or when you've helped cut down on expenses, or if you've helped them grow in sales. So these are all really good examples of social proof if you could put out there based on real customer data. And obviously, always make sure that it's okay with the customer and that you've checked and gotten the okay. Step 6, and the final step, is test and iterate. So you've gone from step 1, where you identified your target audience, Step 2, where you wrote down your persona. Step 3, where you wrote about the competitor. Step 4, where you identified your key value proposition. Step 5, where you put together your social proof and actually give tangible value to the customer. And in step 6, you test and iterate. Here's 2 examples of sites like WordPress. From the time I grabbed this screenshot to now, what I can see is that they're continuously A/B testing as well as changing their value propositions as well. And the same goes for Trello. The lesson learned is it's very important to understand and evolve your value proposition. Sometimes sites have new functionality that becomes really important. Sometimes sites go from having to describe what their value proposition is to when they really have mass adoption in the market, such as WordPress. They no longer need to explain what they are, but they may want to talk about social proof, for example. So always test your value proposition to make sure it's the right one for you at the given time. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the session today. I hope you took away a few key takeaways. If I can just remind you once again, we talked about a framework, and that's the strategizer framework to use to create a value proposition. It's the one to the right over here. We also went through a few examples of how the strategizer framework comes to life with real value propositions in the market today. And then we also discussed 6 steps to help you get started putting together your own value proposition. I hope this was helpful, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.